Welcome to East Coast DNA. We continue with our series of nominees for Music PEI's awards on their Music Week coming up in March. So, throughout the month of February, we have quite a few of these episodes. So, hopefully, everybody's been able to keep up. And today's artist that we have as a guest is BraedenV. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I did want to ask a little bit about Braden V, and I kind of know the name. The V is actually your last initial.
Yeah, initially it's kind of like the idea was just to create a short form version of my
Yeah.
name. But the V can stand for other things too, though.
Oh yeah, sure. It makes it a little bit flexible, but
Yeah,
as far as people greeting you on the street, Braden's fine as well. Then
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I get into
Some
that
people
with
have changed me.
email.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
some people have just called me Braden V now too, so it's a little weird. I'm like every time somebody says that, I'm like, I'm still getting used to it almost.
yeah. I hear you.
Mm,
So, speaking of still getting used to it, as we briefly had a conversation before I hit record here
mhm.
too, your career in music, for the most part, has been the last couple of years. So, I do know of you from like 2021 era. So, like that kind of been like your debut on the scene, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
So it would have kind of been the timing of the beginning of this podcast too.
Huh.
So at the time where things were a little bit slower because things were still just reopening,
Yeah.
I was digesting a lot of content to find out who was out there on the scene. And the hip hop scene or rap scene, whichever way you want to go, I did find a lot of locals that I was surprised by over here in
Hmm.
Nova Scotia, and like we're a couple hours outside of Halifax as well, where I'm
Okay.
at. So I was surprised to see how many there were. Then I started realizing that there was a generation that maybe due to my age and when I was parenting, I kind of missed a generation that was rap battling and house parties
Mhm.
and stuff all through high
Yeah,
school.
yeah, yeah.
That when I was growing up, like rap was new, so
Mhm.
we weren't really doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I started looking into other regions, and I did come across yourself and Spivvy, who you've
Nice.
also done work with.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would like to go back, if you don't mind, to that era.
Sure.
And what was your inspiration like when we had kind of a rebirth of a music scene? Anyone that's been following the show knows that I follow all the different genres and I reference quite a bit of stuff that's a little dated now too, because some of those bands haven't been around for a while.
Mhm.
So I definitely know that there's been a culture for it on the East Coast since day one, and
Right.
it's been building over the years. But your own personal inspirations for actually getting out there and putting your face out there.
Oh man, it's a good question. Honestly, it's kind of like it's a strange thing. It almost is like I was made for this, and I know a lot of people will say that, but like from day one, my dad is a multi instrumentalist. He's a
Hmm.
very talented musician. He was a single father though, so he never had the chance to really pursue it seriously. But I literally grew up falling asleep listening to him composing his own music, playing synth,
Yeah.
keyboard, the whole thing. And we used to travel around a lot, so a lot of times in the car we'd be listening to classic rock or you know what I mean, Rush or all kinds of usually classic rock oriented stuff. 'Cause that's what my dad liked. But that really created a love for music from like super early on for me. And my dad actually worked in editing in video and audio production. So I kind of have this background without even intentionally kind of aiming for it of having a familiarity with music and video production studios. My dad would often bring in artists and I'd hear, help set up the studio while they would, come to record. And then I kind of never really thought about like being a singer or a rapper, an artist for a long time. It was just kind of one of those things. I always had a passion for music, but never considered myself like, talented or able to do it or whatever. You know what I mean? Not that I consider myself talented now, but just I never thought about it as a career path or an idea
Hmm.
as something I would pursue. And then once I was a teenager, I started writing just like poems and short stories to pass the time in class. I, show my friends or whatever, and we laugh about the stupid stories or whatever the hell I was making. And at some point in my teens, it kind of maybe as I became more angsty or whatever, I started writing more kind of deep poetry and stuff. And it wasn't until maybe 2014 or 15 that I sort of started taking to hip hop a bit more and started trying to apply my writing to songwriting and writing rap and hip hop and stuff like that. Um, Before I even started doing any rapping or anything like that, I actually started just by making beats in my like living room on my computer. At one point, I had a bit of a head injury one time, a very light head injury,
Hmm.
and then I ended up getting sick while I was recovering. So I ended up literally I was just locked in my house in the dark for about 2 week period with nothing to do, and that kind of then this is before the pandemic too. So
Yeah.
I kind of had this like 2 week kind of lockdown of my own where I was kind of just recovering and healing and feeling better and making beats. I started making beats during that time, nothing really good. Production is a whole rabbit hole in itself.
Hmm.
And so I started getting into the rabbit hole a bit. And then once 2020 rolled around, I had kind of been in this for a couple of years, been working this job, and everybody at the job knew me as the guy who loved music and loved talking about music. And I always used to say, if I ever have the time, I'll make an album. And then, like I said, 2020 rolled around, lockdown came up, and I got bored of playing Call of Duty with the friends. And
Hmm.
at one point, picked up a little microphone, or actually, I think my dad gave me. It was actually this microphone up here that I recorded my EP with. I don't know if you can
Cool.
see it in the screen, but back
Yeah.
there, what is that, a Sennheiser or something? But anyways, started recording on that in the living room whenever my roommate was not home, um, just to kind of pass the time and as a way of like personal expression, I guess. Um, because there was a lot going on in the world at that time, like politically
Hmm.
and obviously with the pandemic and lockdowns and stuff. And I just felt like kind of powerless and stuck and felt like I had to like try and express myself or do something. So for me, recording was kind of like the way I could get some of my thoughts out, some of my feelings out while I was kind of trapped inside. So I don't know if I answered your question, I guess, very
Oh
well,
yeah.
but
And
it's kind of been a long journey of like discovering like, hey, I'm actually kind of good at this thing, and hey, this is actually something I'm not like unfamiliar with, and hey, this is something I can get better at, and it's just been this very gradual progression to becoming a singer and a rapper and ultimately the
mhm.
artist I am today.
And I do know different artists gravitate towards different things, and some do, like you said, your father being a multi-instrumentalist. So, like, I do know that you can have a wide array of things that you're into, or you can focus on one thing. So, no offense to any rappers that don't also make their own beats at all.
Yeah.
I do know there's different levels of effort as well.
Mhm.
But for yourself, where you were making your own beats, I think that's one of the reasons that when I was researching online that you would have come up. It's because it was
Mhm.
probably you're probably listed a little bit more often online for things
Might be
because
possible.
of both sides. Um, so I do know that when you were kind of on the scene coming out from all of that,
Mhm.
you were making enough noise that you were being noticed outside of your region
Yeah.
because I'm in Nova Scotia and
Yeah. Proof of it.
I
Yeah.
and I'm media. So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I am proof right there.
Mhm.
But I didn't get a chance to meet you. I did have Kavi came over once.
That'd be awesome. Yep.
I'm assuming I was hesitating having a drink, but
Shout out to Cavi. No, that's awesome. You guys got the
yeah,
cozies. Those are awesome. It's good he hooked you up with that. That's dope.
yeah. So for yourself, do you also, like, I see that you work with other artists like Spivvy,
Yep.
and I hear that name a lot as well.
Mhm.
But do you do DJing for other artists live? Like are you in the back doing that for them while they're out there?
Sometimes, not as often, because usually when we do shows, I actually bring on a DJ, DJ Alley Cat, who's been
Okay.
in the scene for years as well. Yeah, yeah, I like to have him because he scratches live on the songs and makes them sound better. So when possible, when I have the budget, I hire him. But yeah, one of the first things actually before I even, actually now that I think about it, before I even started doing the rapping and stuff during 2020, I actually picked up a DJ mixer and started DJing then, just
Oh,
kind of
okay.
messing around a little bit. It was one of those kind of first step things. Um, and so yeah, I've been DJing for about the same amount of time that I've been rapping, getting better at it. I've noticed as I've started making hip hop music, my music tastes have expanded beyond hip hop much more than they were when I kind of
Okay.
started, if that makes sense. And you can hear it in my music, like you start hearing the influences kind of are a bit more dancey nowadays. Still maintaining a hip hop focus, but there's a bit more, it's not always boom bap beats and stuff. It's a lot of electronic kind of up tempo stuff I've been working with more lately, and that's because of my own personal taste. I really love the energy of dance parties and DJ gigs that I get to do, and they help fund my own personal like music that I make. Because sometimes when you're DJing, you're not always playing originals. But
Yeah.
yeah, as far as scratching for other and performing with other rappers kind of as center stage and me being the DJ. We do that a bit, but and I am able to do it, but it's not something I do regularly, I would say. It's just kind of like
Sure.
it's like, hey, we need a DJ, or the DJ can't make it, or then that's when I slide in.
Versatility. There's another V
Yeah.
word. So go over
Yeah,
there.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and the idea too was originally that I could perform my own shows too if I needed to. I went to a couple local hip hop shows. I won't name their names, but they came off as very unprofessional because they were performing off of their phone. And just to me, I found that, like, I'm not trying to insult them. It's just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
personally I went, that doesn't, it's not a great look compared to the rock band who shows up and they're playing their instruments, and you know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, it's always been about making, well, not making the hip hop scene, but appearing myself as professional as possible. So we
Yeah.
always try and bring up the DJ. We try and do everything we can to level up the show and make sure we make it an event rather than just show up and, half-ass do our raps over pre-recorded vocals or whatever. Because a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
guys will phone that in too,
Oh
and that
yeah.
that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff. It doesn't bother me. Like you said, there's different levels of effort. And for me, I've always taken pride in trying to be as professional as possible. And I think that's helped get me to where I am too, relatively quickly.
Oh, absolutely. And I think just by the conversation, it's obvious why you would be in the running for like the hip hop artist of the year.
Oh,
So
thank
I
you.
mean that's one of the nominations. So congratulations there. But
Yep.
I'm really wanting to talk to you a little bit too, outside of that, for the digital presence of
Yep.
the year.
Yep.
I did also talk with another one of the artists that was in that category, and with so many artists nominated in multiple areas, I'm probably talking to most of you at some point
Yeah.
or
Oh,
another here
absolutely.
anyway. So, as a content creator myself, I'm curious how that plays into you, like when you're creating music
Mhm.
versus creating content, like which comes
Yeah.
first and how they feed off each other. But having talked to you now too, I also assume that some of that inspiration kind of comes from growing up around your father because of what
Definitely.
you were around and the type of it's something that people don't realize too. Like, even though like it's obvious that like Instagram and Facebook and stuff are, especially like Instagram, like more of the
Mhm.
last few years as well, really.
Yeah.
There was content like that in the past. You just didn't digest it in the same way.
Mhm.
So when you're around creatives, you're around creatives. So I can definitely see where there were some threads of that in your roots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious about as the creative process. Like my content usually is birthed out of talking to people like yourself in this format, and then I end up going to shows, and then I do some photography or I do a little videography, and then I have to put that content somewhere, and I have a channel for it. So I mean, it's kind
Yeah.
of an organic growth where I've expanded. But
Mhm.
how did that happen for you? Because not everyone does that for themselves.
True. First of all, I'll say that I do have a bit of like we said with my family history and my dad's working in the film industry, essentially television industries. As I was growing up, I had like a built-in ingrained understanding of a lot of the elements of editing, and what I mean, there's a lot that goes into editing videos and creating good quality visual content that I don't want to say that like in this day where everybody can just pull out their cell phone when they're in their bathroom and make a lip sync video or whatever. There's a lot of what I would call like zero budget content,
Yeah.
and that's okay. It's like people have to get their music out there somehow, right? And I think the best content strategies involve some of that, and then some more budget focused or higher quality content, what I would call higher quality content, professional quality or whatever. So for me, the content creation process usually starts with the music and the writing process of the music and the lyrics in particular. Um, Beat selection is a big part of it too. Usually, when I'm picking a beat or making a beat, it needs to have a very cinematic or emotional vibe for me. If I don't feel
Hmm.
any emotion from it, I'm not going to be able to write a good song to it. That's something I've learned. So, for one, it's about emotional context first, and then I can work a visual or create visual ideas or whatever around that. So, and this wasn't something I started with. It was just something that I've kind of developed as I've written a few songs and then made a few music videos. I went like, okay, maybe I should come up with a couple lyrics and come up with video ideas as I'm writing the
Hmm.
song so that it kind of all comes together in the final product. And that's only something I've started doing I want to say in the last 2 years, probably. Now, to get down to like the beginning of it, though, when I first started making content, it was simply just like lyric video visualizers that I made on a website for free. And then eventually I kind of Went through a period of going like, why am I so shy about putting my face on camera? A lot of artists are generally pretty shy, and a lot of people don't want to create content because they don't want it to be like this all the time. Like, look at this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't love that aspect either. I've been trying to get my face out of the music videos a bit more and focus, like, you know what I mean? But content creation is something I've struggle with like loving and hating because it can really build a burnout. And I've
Yeah.
burnt out a couple times from just putting way too much effort into edits and all that stuff. So my content creation process is a bit ADHD, as you'll notice I am. But for the most part, it starts with the songwriting. I really do try and, especially now, create visual ideas or at least cinematic ideas in the music and then the lyrics. Because by the time the video comes around, we've got like a theme idea and we've got maybe some color tones that we're ready to work with, or just very simple things like that, emotional content or cool ideas of, hey, this would be really cool if I was rapping in this spot or if I was doing something here. You know what I mean? Just little things, and it can kind of come together over time. Doesn't always have to be concrete. A lot of times I start with kind of like a rough idea, what I call idea
Yeah.
vomit, for lack of a better term. But I just go, okay, I've got the song, and I'm going to come up with a bunch of ideas I can for it. We'll figure out what we can afford to do, what we can't afford to do, how can I do it on my own, what do I need other people for, and it really grows from there. Um, and so for artists, my advice is always just try and create a content strategy that you can sustain. So don't
Hmm.
expect everything to be super high quality, but also make a budget, because you can't just be doing all those bathroom point at yourself lyric videos either. I feel like that gets very stale and it looks cheap ultimately too. And for me, I don't want my whole feed to be looking cheap. I want it to look professional. I want people to come across the page and go, "Oh my gosh, this guy is like ridiculously professional for the level he's at." And
Hmm.
that, because that's what's going to build the level up. You know what I mean? A lot of people want to build a following, they want to build an audience, but they don't want to put that extra effort in to create the content. And my whole
Hmm.
thought is, if I want somebody to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I need to have a bunch of good videos. I can't have one. I can't have three. Nobody's going to say subscribe. You
Yeah.
need 20. You need something for them to digest. So content creation is about that for me too. It's about like creating meat for them to, for the audience to ingest while they're, and that'll get them addicted to the music. Because a lot of people won't just share a song if they like it, but if it's got a really good video, maybe they'll share that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's kind of my thought process behind it.
I do find too that outside of the growth online for followers, because that doesn't always transition as well as people may
No.
assume.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it does generate a little bit extra like word of mouth because people are talking about what they saw online when they're not looking at their phone, which is kind of a sad reflection of society.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's
it
true.
actually is an extra bonus of having content online is that people
Yeah.
are like, what are you looking at? Or what did you do last night? Or hey, did you
Mhm.
hear of this person? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I have to be honest, like these days, I don't spend as much time looking for information because there's
Mhm.
so much content coming
Yeah.
at me. But I definitely know that I'm finding out a lot of information sitting in my apartment, despite the fact
Yeah.
that I'm on the road a lot. A
Mhm.
lot of the information in my head is stuff that I got off of Instagram or
Yeah.
Bandcamp or a quick Google search
Yeah.
about who was that guy I saw last night. Like,
Yeah.
so it is definitely something that's required, and it's great that you're able to do a little bit of everything both on both fronts.
Mhm.
I definitely know a few artists out there like yourself, and as somebody myself that I've collaborated with people on this end as well. But because I can, same as you, like
Mhm.
I can do all those things,
Yeah.
I if I really want to do something, I can just do it. And
Yeah.
similar, I'm sure to yourself, like I will come up with all those ideas. I'll decide on one, make a plan, and then when that doesn't work, I just end up doing like a revised version of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily people see your content and they assume like that's everything you've ever done, but it's like a
Yeah.
percentage. It's the
Yeah.
stuff that you decided to follow through with. So
Absolutely right. Yeah. And I think that's also almost a good perspective to have as an artist too, is that a lot of what, like the idea of a lot of what I'm making is not going to see the light of day,
yeah,
especially with writing. I'm really big on editing. It drives me nuts when you can sometimes tell when a song is a first draft. You know what I mean? Like, and for me, I get frustrated hearing that, because 10% more effort puts you 90% ahead of everybody
yeah,
else. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's
So, and
true.
a lot of people aren't willing to put in that extra 10%. I'm one of the guys that do. And part of the reason, though, And I'm not trying to brag. Part of the reason is because I'm new at this and I'm not as
Yeah.
experienced and I'm not as far ahead as I'd like to be. And so a bit of it is me almost like working harder to catch up or trying to, you know what I mean? So I almost have to compete with myself, I feel like, because I'm not really trying to compete with other people. My whole thing is just like, how can I elevate and how can I learn from this release and get better on the next one? And how can we, and every time it's about upgrading and moving to the next thing. So, it's just one of those things. Content, especially content these days, can be so frustrating for artists because they're like, what do I post? What do I post? And the truth is, 90% of what you need to do is just document your process. Turn
Yeah.
on the camera while you're writing. Like last night, I was recording myself as I was writing a grant. And that sounds like horrible, boring content, but I only need a 7-second clip out of that. And I can
Yeah.
put some
Yeah.
text over it and create some context. And then there's a reel. And that's going to get 500 views. Might not seem like a lot, or 200 views even. Doesn't seem like a lot. That's still like, if you get 200 people in a room, it's actually quite a few. Now,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And people, unfortunately, with the numbers on the screens these days, we see the biggest artists in the world getting millions and millions of views, and we compare ourselves to that, and that's so silly because as a local or regional artist, getting a couple hundred eyeballs on something you made for relatively cheap is actually a marketing boon in
Oh yeah.
in any other age of human history.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. For me, I consider every time I post, I want it to be either educating people or informing them about what I'm doing. Usually musically, I'm not a big like self promotion guy. Like, hey, look at my life. I usually kind of keep it a little private actually. But as far as the music promotion and shows and all that stuff goes, um, it's part of the game now. It's that simple. It's
Yeah.
part of the game now. And if people want to, pursue a music dream and they have lofty goals, they have to be willing to do some of these things that kind of suck sometimes or a little frustrating sometimes or they don't want to do or whatever. My whole thought is like, be willing to put yourself on camera because if you want to get to that level, you're going to be on other people's cameras and you have no
Yeah.
choice what to post. So at
Yeah.
least at this point, just create whatever you can that you are okay with. You don't have to love it. It doesn't have to be perfect because at this point, nobody really expects, I think, at this level for it to be perfect. But at least start doing it. You know what I mean? And then if maybe you suck at shooting or editing or whatever, find out what you're good at and do it yourself and find what you're not great at and hire people if you can or create a budget so you can once in a while
Yeah.
even. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things. Community is big too. You got to be able to have a couple people, other artist peers that you can work with. Hey, shoot me, I'll shoot you. Let's shoot some reels on Sundays, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier than I think people realize. A lot of people
That's
just,
what I was going to say. People
yeah,
are surprised probably when they realize, like, oh, I could have just asked this guy to help me out, and then I would have
yeah,
helped him next
yeah,
weekend or whatever. Like,
100%. Yep.
there's a little bit of like the arts. I always talk about how much grants are required to keep things moving when you're looking for
Yeah.
funding. And I mean, the political landscape right now is a little uncertain. We don't know where things are going to go with that.
Yeah.
So we do have to keep in mind that like a barter system for services is not, there's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that at all. Like that's
Absolutely.
just people
Absolutely.
helping each other out. So
Yeah.
sometimes we focus a little too much on the money. Like
Yeah.
I need money to travel when I go around to different sites,
Hmm.
but there's a lot that I actually can do on a relatively small budget as long as you have time to put the effort in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, 100%. And community, like I said, community is key. Like everybody wants to be the guy, especially in hip hop. I found without naming names, a lot of people want to be like the Eminem or they want to be
Hmm.
Drake or the guy, you know what I mean? And they don't realize that those guy or girl or whatever, they have an entire team, a support system before them. And before they even got to that level, they were also part of a community.
Yeah,
Usually that community is a peer artist community, maybe, even if it's a label or whatever. But working with other artists, every single chance you can learn something from them, even if it's what not to do. This is the funny part. It's like a lot of people think it's always positive. There's plenty of shows I've done or projects I've worked on where I went, okay, I know not to do that next time or not to work with that person or not to, you know what I mean? Not to do whatever that was. So literally, I think for artists, it's like make everything a learning experience and just keep trying to figure out how to like what's the next level up? What's the next step? What's the next thing? Because um, I don't know. A lot of people, like I said, they're very selfish focused in the music industry, which makes sense. Like you've got your own career to push. I get it,
hmm,
but you're not going to level up without the support structure either. You need other people to help you out and to help them out. And the best way to like help your scene is to realize that like we all win if anybody in the scene blows up or whatever.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because that's always seems like that's always the goal. Is somebody wants to blow up and get some miracle that'll change their life or whatever. And truth is that very rarely happens. But my thought is like if anybody in the scene is going to blow up, it's because the others in the scene supported each other. You know what I
absolutely.
mean? Nobody blows up in a vacuum or whatever. So
No,
my
no,
my whole
exactly. Very,
and
very
yeah,
good point.
Yeah, well, it's one of these things where because I think I've learned it out of frustration because I
Sure.
thought when I first started that I would be like release a couple songs and then the whole community of other artists, not even locally, but just like in general, other hip hop artists or whatever, would be like, hey, let's collab, let's work together, let's do this, let's do that. And I actually found the opposite. I found in
Hmm.
4 years, I'm actually struggling to get people to send a verse back. And that's frustrating because it's like we can both win together. We don't have to, hey, pay me $300 for a verse. No, no, no. Let's not pay each other. Let's make a dope song and put money into promoting it, and we both win. But a lot of people, like you said, money's first. They want to make money. Don't try and extract money from your local other artists in your scene. That's
Right.
not really the way to make it anyway, right? I would much rather do favor for favor or something. That's not to say I'm not willing to pay people. Like I'm not
Yeah.
trying to sound
Once
cheap.
once the money
Um,
starts flowing, that's when everyone starts to charge a fair rate because
yeah,
you gotta
exactly.
have
Yeah,
that
and
community
yeah,
of support to
yeah, and
collaborate in the first place.
most of us are broke artists. There's no reason
Yeah.
to try and pretend that we're not. And then, like I said, if Spivvy and I have had a great relationship because we've always just been like, let's work together to make the best music we can or the best things we can. It's never been about like, how much are you going to pay me for this thing and how much am I going to
Hmm.
do get what am I going to get for doing this for you? It's always let's do this and then let's do this and we help each other out in many ways. And that's really the way we both get ahead. Like everybody gets ahead that way. The rising tide raises all ships.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so that's obviously been a strategy that's working for you with the two nominations. So 2024 was a very successful year for you already, but I'm curious for 2025. I did do a little bit of research, so I have a little bit of indication what's going to happen, but maybe you could just tell us in your own words, what are your
Yeah.
plans for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so I spent the kind of second half of last year working on my new album. It was supposed to be a full album. It's ended up being kind of a long EP
Hmm.
for those who care about the difference, I guess. But so it's called Neon Nights, and I spent a bit of time last year touring to support it, even though it hasn't been released on all platforms yet. And as 2025 continues, I'm going to be rolling out each of those tracks as singles leading up to the full album release, essentially closer to the end of the year. And in that time, I'm also going to be producing all kinds of visual content for each one of those tracks, or at least several of them. There might be one or
Hmm.
two I might not do too much for, but for the main kind of key tracks on the record, I'm going to be doing videos and lots of live shows. I've already got more live show bookings for the first 6 months of this year than I did last year. So we're
Amazing.
already looking at so we're already looking at a better year in terms of that, which is fantastic because it's very difficult on the East Coast to pay your bills as an artist, especially in the slower months like winter. And in the summer, I'm actually at a point now where I'm getting some months I can pay my bills with the music, some I'm this close. So
Yeah.
my hope is that this summer I'll be basically full-time music, and as I continue to build my brand and tour around the East Coast and stuff, I can hopefully get more opportunities and in the off seasons, winters and stuff like that, to continue performing kind of year round and eventually make this a full-time thing, even if that's kind of a regional circuit, which is
Yeah.
more than likely the way to start. It's very expensive to tour, and I don't really like the idea of touring across the whole country and playing a bunch of gigs for six people. I've done plenty of gigs, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Like my thought is, if you want to play for 1,000 people, be willing to play for 1,000 times. You know what I mean? But or 100 or whatever the math is. The But like I said, touring is also expensive, so you got to do it strategically. And so my thing is, I'm just going to try and build a little circuit regionally where I can be profitable or break even on it. And then from there, we expand and build and keep doing this every time, a little bit bigger, build the snowball. So yeah, 2025 is going to be a big year for me because I'm hoping we'll get an award or two. Maybe, I mean, ECMAs haven't been announced yet, but my goal for 2026 is to get an ECMA nom. So I'm hoping this album will help me push to that. And one thing I haven't done very much since I started is promote my Spotify. Almost all of my traffic to my Spotify is organic. I don't have a ton of listeners on my Spotify,
Okay.
but and it's one of those things. But like I said, I don't promote the Spotify page because I don't really like Spotify that much. It it demonetized 80% of its artists last year, and we're going to pretend that it's a good company. You know what I mean? And I'm tired of pretending. So while I will push the Spotify as these tracks go live, I do have a budget for that. My main focus has always been live shows and physical sales,
Yeah.
selling product, because the streaming is more and more difficult to make money off of. Not that I do it for money anyway, but you want my goal is I would like my music to pay for the next release. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? My last release
Absolutely.
will pay for the next one and hopefully make it slightly better budget each time, right? Again, the next level up, bigger, 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 right? So you can kind of see how my mindset is. It's just all
Absolutely.
about like every time we level up a little bit, even if it's in areas that the public don't notice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even with this record, I felt like I leveled up on the rapping big time. And when it comes out, I think maybe some people will say that, but it's one of those things that happens behind the scenes. That happens in all those performances for six people, the development of an artist. You know what I mean? And those weeks I spent in the studio hating everything I wrote and editing and editing and editing and scrapping things and then rewriting and finally it gets to a point where I go like I've actually improved as a human. Like my every skill I have as an artist and a person has improved because of the struggle of this process that I put myself through. So I'm hoping over 2025 to not struggle as much, but
Hmm.
continue that process of kind of just keep building, keep releasing, consistent. Consistent's my keyword for this year. I just want to keep it going
I
because I
loved, I love hearing it.
yeah, just
So,
to finish, if you don't mind,
yeah.
because last year, as well as I did in the live circuit, I did not release that much as I'd like to. I
Oh,
only put out
okay.
2 songs last year, and that's it's actually the slowest year I've had in releases since I started. So we're reversing that in 2025 for sure.
Perfect. So keep East Coast DNA informed as you go along. Be happy to let our audience know as well. Anyone
Sweet,
that's
thank you.
new to the show, please subscribe and follow along the rest of the year. We have a lot of content coming and a few trips
Awesome,
to Prince Edward Island aside from just being over for the music week. So
awesome.
I'm bound to run into you at some point.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to
But
link up. If you're in
for the
East Coast, that'd
music
be
week
awesome.
itself, were you performing?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be performing March 6th. Let me get my notes to make sure I don't forget this. March 6th at Craft Beer Corner is the Music PEI. It's called the Rhythm and Flow Case.
Hmm.
I'll be Cavi will be there. He'll be performing as well. A couple other artists as well. Let me think. I don't want to forget anybody. D-Mix, Norm Strangely, and Right Flow will also be performing on that bill. And I've actually hired a backup band for this. I'm going to have the DJ and a guitarist with me live. So it'll be a really cool, unique experience in that sense. Although for a hip hop show, that might be a bit unexpected for some of the people. So I'm going to make sure my set list also kind of is some of my more rap centric songs, even though I've kind of got the rock band vibe going.
Hmm.
As soon as I added a guitarist to my live show, the music suddenly took this like rocky twist. It's really interesting how that works. So we're going to try and keep it hip hop, but we've got the additional instrumentation. It's going to be a really fun show. I'm super excited for that performance.
So everybody that's wanting to follow along with you, if they're following East Coast DNA, I'll try to put some clips up as I go
Sure.
along through the week as well. If anybody's following along from home that week, I will try to do some live streams as I'm watching some of those showcases as well. But if anybody wants to just follow you online, where should we be sending them?
Um, Instagram is probably the best way to keep up with what I do regularly. I'm a big story guy, I like posting stories. Um, and then, I use Facebook a bit. Definitely Instagram if you want to really keep up. That's for sure.
Perfect. Well, thanks for giving me some of your time. And when I
Anytime.
am over there on the island, I'll definitely keep an eye out for you. I'm gonna have to try to hit as many showcases as possible. I was
Yeah.
talking with one of the committee members there, and I think I got it almost worked out that I can hit everything. So
Oh, really nice. I was gonna
yeah.
say, I think the songwriter concert's in Summerside the same day as us, so you'll be driving around a bit at
Oh
least.
yeah, yeah. I'll have a car with me, so
Yeah,
I'll
great.
see what I can do anyway, and I'll cross my fingers as far as weather.
Yeah, yeah,
We've been
exactly.
good
Yeah.
so far.
Mhm.
So if I do have any downtime, I've been asking some of the artists too, just before I let you go. Is there anywhere that you would recommend that maybe I stop in my travels should I have the time? Maybe a venue or an eatery?
Yeah, yeah. So depending on where you are, I guess. I frequently go to New Glasgow to do shows in I guess that's like New Nova Scotia, I suppose. It's right near New Brunswick, so sometimes I confuse which one's which. But New Glasgow has a spot called Shoebox Cantina, Shoebox Lounge, Shoebox Cantina.
Oh, that's where
They're
I am
really
right
good.
now.
Is that really where you
It's
are
like
right now?
Shoebox is a 5 minute drive from here.
That's hilarious. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of their venue. I played there a couple times now. I'm hoping to get there
Hmm.
this summer too. I really like it there. They're a really cool spot. And then when you're in Charlottetown, Bubba's Lounge is kind of my main spot where they give me the most gigs. It's a bit of a what would they call it? I don't want to call it a hole in the wall. That makes it sound like it's like cheap or something.
Yeah,
But it's like one
yeah.
of those local kind of ones that the locals will know about that they might they'd kind of suggest to you or whatever. That's one of the best hubs for music on PEI. The open mic night's amazing. You can meet so many talented people there that are just
Hmm.
coming out to play some songs or whatever. They're not even releasing sometimes professionally. It's really interesting. One thing I've been really surprised in a good way about since starting music is I think, and you mentioned it earlier, the amount of talented artists on the East Coast is just
Hmm.
unbelievable. just you know, like even just one of the artists that got nominated for Music PEI Award, I can't remember off the top, maybe D-Mix. We just linked up recently online talking, and we're like, how do we not know each other existed? We live on the
Yeah,
same island. We're both making similar genre music, and we haven't crossed paths. How strange is that? So it just goes to show you the breadth of the genres and how much they're growing.
yeah,
And that's a really good thing. It's a really good thing because I'm a big community guy, and I love to see niche communities like hip hop grow locally. I think that's a really cool thing.
absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a good sign. Like I said, a couple of years ago, I was out looking to see what I could find,
Yeah,
but now, like, it's we have such a healthy scene that like
yeah,
you just walk out in your front doorstep and you're gonna hear about a new single or a live show
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. No, it's an awesome thing. Yeah, and I'm really excited to see what the next year has for a lot of music PI and East Coast relate like kind of focused artists. I do think there's going to be a couple big. I don't want to say necessarily like breakthroughs for some artists, but I do think in the next 6 months we're going to see some really big breaks happen for a couple local guys. So that's
Yeah,
I'm excited for that. You know, hopefully I can be one of them, but I'm happy to cheer them on if I'm not. You know, I'll get there someday.
amazing. So I'll be right there alongside you either way,
I
and
appreciate that.
hopefully we'll also be running into each other outside of Prince Edward Island this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, maybe when I'm playing Shoebox, maybe you can come out. I'll get you
Yeah,
on the VIP list.
perfect. All right, we'll talk to you very soon, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on your platform.